Hi, and welcome to Ones and Twos, FP's economics podcast. Every week, we take a couple of data points. We use them to try to explain the world. My name is Cameron Abadi, FP's deputy editor with you in Berlin, Germany. As always, Adam Tooze, FP's economics columnist and Columbia University professor, is with us, this time in London. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Cam.
So this week, our episode is going to be a bit different. We're going to be talking about Thanksgiving, the American harvest festival meal that happens in late November every year. We're going to do one segment talking about the economics of Thanksgiving, and then we decided we'd spend the other segment talking about things we're thankful for, because that's the idea behind Thanksgiving. And so we'll do that in the second half of the show. But yeah, in the first half of the show, our data point is $448 US. That's the amount that American consumers will spend on average on Thanksgiving this year.
Shoppers will certainly see a bigger price tag this year to make their favorite Thanksgiving dishes. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, a classic Thanksgiving feast for 10 people will cost $64.05 this year, up 20% from last year.
Thanksgiving is famously a holiday that is not commercial in nature. There are no presents that are exchanged on this holiday, but of course, there's an economic dimension to everything, and Thanksgiving is not excluded from that. So yeah, let's just dive right in. The centerpiece of every Thanksgiving meal, or the sort of archetypal Thanksgiving meal, is the turkey that is pulled out of the oven and placed on the table for everyone to eat together. I noticed in looking up some of the economics around this that the demand for turkeys obviously surges around November every year. But at the same time, Adam, the price also drops. So I thought I'd just ask you, how exactly does that work? What are the economics of turkeys exactly?
So turkeys, for listeners around the world, we should say that really the only two groups of people that I know that eat turkey on a huge scale are British people at Christmas and Americans at Thanksgiving, and I guess some Americans also eat turkey at Christmas. But I guess otherwise it's just sort of famous as a lean meat, which isn't terribly tasty, and most people prefer chicken. But turkey in the US around this time of year is a huge deal. And the way it works is not that, as it were, they rear all the turkeys and then the poor things all get slaughtered all at once in time for Thanksgiving, because that wouldn't work. But instead, basically, you've got to think of the turkey population as a kind of more or less steadily maintained tens of millions of birds that are slaughtered throughout the year and then put in cold storage and frozen, which is why the vast majority of turkeys that you can buy in the US around this time of year are frozen. And by the week before Thanksgiving, about somewhere between 500 and 600 million pounds of turkey are sitting in cold storage around the United States, waiting to be unloaded into supermarkets. So that's about 2 pounds of turkey. This is including bone, of course, because it's always the whole bird per American that's waiting to go onto the market. So you can see what the story is. Basically, there is indeed a huge surge in demand for turkey, but at that moment, this is the moment to sell the turkey you've stored, and so you sell it at whatever price you can get for it. And in any case, from the point of view of supermarkets and food stores generally, the turkey is not exactly a loss leader, but it's a product on which you don't generally expect to make a lot of money. The margins on turkey are in the order of 20 to 30 cents per pound, as opposed to a couple of dollars on beef, for instance. By selling the turkey cheap, what you attempt to do is to lure families into your particular supermarket so they spend money on all the other things which are higher margin, which you're really going to earn your return on. It's worth saying that this year, 2022, the turkey situation is a little tougher than normal. Unsurprisingly, prices for everything have been going up, but prices for turkey in particular have been going up. So this is not going to be a cheap turkey year. Prices are about 15 to 20% up, depending on the market you're in. And this is to do with a pandemic. There is an avian flu pandemic right now running through bird populations worldwide. We should be far more worried about it than we are, because this is the really nasty one, which, if it has a zoonotic mutation, could be devastating. In any case, it has taken out, we think, somewhere between 45 and 50 million chickens and turkeys across the United States, and that is a rather large part of the normal supply. So there isn't going to be, let's not unleash a sort of panic buying of turkeys here through the podcast. There's going to be plenty of turkey to go around. But it'll be slightly more expensive than normal because the supply has been hit by this avian flu pandemic. Plus, all the other inputs for feeding the turkeys on the lot have gone up in price as well. So you have a supply chain story as well.
So, Thanksgiving is famously the busiest travel period of the year in the United States. Anywhere from 4.5 million people to 20 million passengers, if we take the data from the TSA, are expected to travel to visit family to share the Thanksgiving meal with. So, Adam, this got me wondering, are these kinds of spread out settlement patterns that require people to get on a plane to visit their family a function just of the size of the United States? And which direction are these settlement patterns moving? Are Americans increasingly or decreasingly staying near their close families?
Yeah, so these numbers about American air travel during Thanksgiving are a little bit dodgy, to be honest, because you can see a figure for 4.5 million out there a lot, which is just far too low, I think, because that's basically less than 2% of the American population flying. The number of 20 million seems a little bit more reasonable to me. I mean, it's still short of 10% of the population. And if you benchmark this against global movements, like the biggest movement in the world is the Chinese Lunar New Year, where you see before the COVID crisis, we saw just shy of 80 million people moving, which is about 5% of the Chinese population. So, ballpark, my sense is that the 20 million figure for the US is much more plausible. It suggests 7-8% of the population fly long distance. We think about 50 million people travel by car. And this is consistent with what we know, I think, about where Americans live in relation to their families, because, broad surveys like done by the Pew survey suggest that about 55% of American adults live within an hour's drive of at least some members of their extended family, the kind of folks you'd expect to do Thanksgiving with, probably. And that is structured exactly as you'd expect. So higher income Americans and Americans with more education tend to live further away because they go to labor markets where their skill set is more highly rewarded. Whereas folks with lower education, less education, and lower incomes tend to be more local and stay closer to their primary family. And I think those trends are, again, as you'd expect, towards, over time, more far-flung family structures. But yes, this is clearly a large-scale movement. I have to say that even if we take the 20 million number, it's slightly less than I expected. I mean, there's obviously in modern society, in a country as large as the United States, a considerable number of people who won't be seeing their families at Thanksgiving this year.
Okay, that sounds like it's potentially the data suggests that people just don't like their families as much as they might claim or might think.
Just can't stand the stress around the turkey, most likely.
Yeah, tell me about it. So, anyone who grows up in the United States learns that the origins of Thanksgiving trace back to this mythic meal that was shared between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans in the colony of New Plymouth. I was curious, Adam, how we should think about this mythic meal in a more historical context. I mean, was this sharing of a mutual bounty of a harvest like American kids are taught, or is this better thought of as a kind of breaking of bread before an extended bid for colonialism across the continent? I mean, maybe another way of asking this is just how exclusionary is the Thanksgiving holiday?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that forces itself on one's consciousness given the subsequent history of white settlement in North America and the disaster that the settlers inflict on the original native population. But I think we probably have to historicize this in the sense that the first encounter, does it appear, I think, according to the sort of early American historians I'm able to read, to have been largely cooperative and indeed a celebration. There were more Wampanoag attendees at that first dinner in 1621 than there were settlers. There were only 50 of the pilgrims that survived that first year. And they invited the locals who'd been extremely helpful to them in getting through that first terrible experience of settlement. Within years, however, relations break down, and we have at least one instance in 1637 of the settler population literally celebrating a military victory over their Indian foes. In other words, essentially celebrating a massacre. It's worth saying, though, that the modern institution of Thanksgiving, and this also, I think, gives it its peculiar coloration as an unambiguous sort of celebration of American migration and immigration, really, dates to the 19th century. The Thanksgiving was not celebrated across the United States outside New England through to the middle of the 19th century. And the association of Thanksgiving with turkey dates to sort of folklorist investigation of the early pilgrim dinners. The investigations took place 200 years later in the 1840s. So it was for the bicentennial of the original settlement, if you like, that in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, interest began to revive in the Thanksgiving meal. And it's not instituted as a national holiday until Abraham Lincoln's time. I mean, Thanksgiving is declared an American nationwide celebration in 1863. And that's really, I think, the moment from there onwards that the modern conception of Thanksgiving takes place. And the significance of that from the point of view of relations between the white colonists and the Native American population is, of course, by that time, the game was played out. The Indian Wars had rampaged, the massacres had taken place, and they're still ongoing through to the end of the 19th century, and the structures of discrimination continue all the way down to the present day. So the instituting of Thanksgiving as this historicist revival of a pilgrim tradition takes place in the middle of the 19th century. So there's no direct descent from the 1620s, but instead a refashioning of this moment in light of the needs of American national political culture in the second half of the 19th century. And the commercial history of Thanksgiving really takes off, in fact, even much later, 100 years later in the 20th century.
So I guess just to finish off, the day after Thanksgiving is famously the busiest shopping day of the year. They call it Black Friday in the United States, and I gather that the name has also even now been adopted abroad as a day for shopping. So, yeah, what is the origin of Black Friday exactly, and what is its significance for the US economy specifically?
Well, it seems that the way this works, and I speak very much as an outsider to this tradition, but basically the idea is the day after Thanksgiving initiates the pre-Christmas shopping season. So that's really the deal. So from the early 20th century onwards, across many North American towns, including in Canada, you see local department stores sponsoring parades. So the most famous one is in New York, the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. And as the final float on many of these parades, you would have Father Christmas arriving to announce, now, dear children, we are, you can legitimately begin harassing your parents about the Christmas gifts that you're going to get, and you can start, begging to have the Christmas tree put up, and so on and so forth. And so that then, as it were, created the occasion for marketing, and as it were, a grand opening to the Christmas shopping season. In the 1950s, department stores began instituting a huge sale on that particular day. In fact, I think some of the sales go back to the 1930s as well. And then it was apparently the local police department in Philadelphia that named that day Black Friday because of the chaos that would ensue. It's not, I think, until the 1980s that Black Friday sales go truly nationwide and become the institution that they are today. That's the moment where you really begin to see sales across the country. And at that point, the name Black Friday takes on a different connotation because it's the moment the retail industry goes from being in the red to going in the black. In other words, this is the moment, this is the over the next 5 or 6 weeks, they are going to do the busiest trade of the whole year.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now and come back to talk about things that we're thankful for this year. Hi, and welcome back. We're continuing to talk about Thanksgiving. And as I mentioned, the Thanksgiving holiday is intended for participants to reflect on things they're thankful for, and we thought we'd do the same. So each of us decided to think of 2 things out there in the world that we're thankful for this year. And yeah, Adam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this is an opportunity to reflect on the role of Twitter in our lives. I feel pretty grateful for having had Twitter the last. I joined seriously in 2015, and it's been a very big part of my life since. Obviously, for many people, it's been a major source of comradeship and stimulation and information and news and entertainment and frustration and God knows what else for longer. But I say that also conscious of course, the risk of potentially losing it in the not too distant future. And so maybe my Thanksgiving thought is how grateful I am to the hardy troop of people who are still maintaining the system right now. and rolling with whatever the hardcore culture is that Elon Musk has declared. For me, it's really an essential part of not just my working life, but really a community. I know people all over the world as a result of Twitter, and really only as a result of Twitter. So yeah, I am grateful for it.
You say 2015, that's relatively late, I guess, in the scheme of these things.
Super late. Yeah. I was really late to the social media.
Do you remember what the sort of holdup was, or what sort of pushed you over the precipice into actually signing up for it?
Oh yeah, it was very specific. We were in Singapore, and I fell over and broke my ankle in Singapore in a monsoon downpour on a very slippery surface, and had a broken ankle in Singapore. Was profoundly frustrated with the world. Was expecting to do a great trip around Southeast Asia, and was being grumpy and impossible. And my daughter said, "Dad, I think this might distract you," and said, "Go on Twitter. I think that's what you need. Irritating people like you should go on this platform." And that's it. That's literally it. Edie said, "Dad, you need this. You're being impossible. You need something to distract you." How long have you been on it for?
I signed up. I wasn't like an early adopter or the earliest adopter, but at some point I realized as a journalist it was a sort of necessity, and so I signed up somewhere a few years in. And I'm not nearly as prolific as you. I'm a lurker. I'm one of these folks who follow others and learn things that way. But for whatever reason, I've never been able to close that gap between sort of my online life and my actual personality. Like I don't know how to actually find a way to express myself quite naturally on there.
No, I'm not sure I close it. I think my daughter's thesis was I might be, I don't know, either it would be a taming device. De facto for me, I think my best self shows up on Twitter. So, anyway, enough of me. What's your first grateful item? What are you grateful for?
I was going to say the mediocrity of the New York Jets, the football team, the American football team this year.
They started really well, didn't they? They had a great start to the season.
Well, that's right. That's right. Though they had this terrible, awful loss to their main rival, the New England Patriots. I think even Patriots fans would scoff at them, Jets fans, saying they're a rival because the Jets have been so bad for so long. And in some weird way, this was a relief because it's sort of, I felt like I don't have to get my hopes up for a more torturous like letdown later on in the season. And that to me is sort of my psychology as a Jets fan my whole life. I've been following this team that has been terrible, and that I no longer want them to do well because I only think that they're going to sort of figure out a way to screw it up. So I don't know. I was hoping you could clarify why.
It's literally, so you feel grateful that they've actually now reverted to the mean of Jets terribleness. That's actually kind of a relief.
No. To clarify, I don't want them to be. I guess I don't want them to be catastrophically bad. That itself is somehow dispiriting. But I actually prefer them to be mediocre. Like, don't raise your head up too high above that, and then we don't have to pretend things are going to go well or better than that.
So you don't want your heart broken, basically.
Precisely. And I wonder what sort of damaged psychology I'm expressing here, because like I why would I not walk away at this point from this thing? And I realize that's a kind of economic question, I guess. I mean,
yeah, we should get to this. This is a behavioral economics question, right, isn't it? There's something here about like avoiding. And in fact, in light of the World Cup and being English, perhaps we have a future segment here, which is how do you survive life when you are forced to identify with mediocrity and the very high probability of failure.
Because my understanding is there's this, economic thesis about sunk cost fallacies. Like you're supposed to walk away from something when you know it's a loss. Like it's a kind of mental mistake not to. And so I don't really know what this fandom that I've somehow embraced is at all, but
did you get it from your parents?
Oh no.
They from the schoolyard.
You'd like to know the origins. I mean, it's so silly. It's this. I don't want to be too melodramatic, but this kind of like cross that I bear in life traces back to second grade. I think their quarterback was someone by the name of Boomer Esiason, and I just like that name, Boomer.
Oh, yeah,
Boomer.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, excellent. Oh my God,
that's a 7-year-old on Long Island. His name was Boomer, and then I went to the local Staples, office store, and he was signing autographs, and I got his autograph. His jersey's still in my closet here in Berlin. It was signed by him from second grade. Anyway, because of that, here I am today.
You,
Yeah,
decades of
exactly. If
pain.
I knew then, if you told me then, I'm signing up for in exchange for that autograph, I would obviously reverse that. But I don't know. But
we have to go deeper on this. We're gonna go deeper on this. We're gonna do a thing on the economics of doomed fandom for sure. Yeah.
and anyway, Adam, you're up. What else are you thankful for?
Another like big one. I'm in England. I'm seeing my family. And I can only do this because the pandemic has been tamed, and I am profoundly grateful for that. I mean, I have to say, like my dad died during the pandemic, and not of the pandemic, but during it, and he never saw the end of lockdown really. And my mum is doing well and fine, and we're out and about and enjoying life in London. And I'm traveling around like a madman, and I would not be able to do any of this without the vaccines. And so, I'm up to my 5th now, and it's a miracle. It's absolutely extraordinary. So that I think I continue, and every dinner you go to, every gathering you have with friends is enabled by this. We've never had. I think it's always been something to celebrate being with friends, but actually knowing firsthand what it means to not be able to be with anyone that you care about, really, other than the people that you happen to be what we podded with or whatever. It's really a dramatic experience.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is also there's been like a compensatory, kind of release. Precisely this feeling you're describing, the kind of isolation for so long has made one realize how important these kinds of contacts are, and one seeks them out even more.
Speaking of which, that's your final sense of gratitude comes from that, doesn't it? That corner.
Yeah, well, I suppose similarly. I think this was so. I was also telling Adam right before we started recording that this week I'm hosting a number of friends who are flying in to Berlin. My birthday actually has always been close to Thanksgiving, and I'm turning 40 this year, and I'm genuinely thankful that friends from different walks of life, from different periods of life, are going to be coming here and spending a few days here. I mean, on one hand, this comes with some stresses. I'm now the host for Thanksgiving and find myself trying to figure out how to prepare that much food for what's going to turn out to be 16 people who are staying here.
16 people?
Yeah, I'm every
in your apartment.
We found neighbors who are away, so one family's staying in with neighbors, but I literally have my two oldest friends are literally sleeping in the basement, and then otherwise I'm sort of cramming people to every corner of my apartment, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for that, actually. I really mean that. Of course, there's stress and there's money and all this stuff is involved. But yeah, it struck me, what else is it worthwhile spending money on than close relationships? And I don't know if there's sort of studies that suggest that's a rational way to think about it, but that's how it feels, certainly.
There are, absolutely, right? There's that big Harvard longitudinal study where they look at a cohort of Harvard graduates, and there's nothing that predicts longevity and good health better than the intensity of personal relationships.
Okay, that's what I'll tell them when I stick them in the basement. I'll tell them it's good for you.
Where did I read this? I read this on Twitter.
There we go.
I will. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah, but those are 2 good episodes, right? Your psychology, in fact, in general, Cam, would make I'm feeling has become a rich vein. We're just going to mine you. We're just going to mine Cam for insights and behavioral economics.
Well, put me on the couch.
What makes Cam tick? Yeah.
Yeah. So we can do a series of those. Anyway, I'm also thankful for this podcast. It's been great doing this, and we will leave it there for now. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone partaking.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Don't burn yourselves up with the turkey.
Yeah, and enjoy Black Friday, I guess, if whoever's participating in that. Okay, bye-bye. Ones and Tooze is written and edited by me, Cameron Abadi, along with Adam Tooze. It is produced by Laura Rossbrow-Tellum and Rob Sachs. Our social media manager is Claudia Tatey. The executive editor of FP Podcasts is Dan Efron. This show is made possible through the support of foreign policy readers. If you're interested not just in Adam Tooze, but news and analysis from around the world, consider subscribing. Ones and Tooze listeners even get a 15% discount. Just go to foreignpolicy.com/subscribe and use the promo code TOOZE at checkout. That is TOOZE. And listeners, as always, we love hearing your feedback. You can send us voice messages on the Ones and Twos homepage on foreignpolicy.com, or you can email us, podcasts@foreignpolicy.com, or tweet us. That's at Ones and Twos Pod. Thanks very much for listening, and we will see you back in your feed next week.